Good afternoon. My name is Sasha Starr. It's a chess show on IBM TV or POT TV network. And I would like to introduce my esteemed guest. It's Grandmaster Suat Adalik. Welcome to the show, Suat.
Hi, Sasha.
Hi. And Professor Ken Reagan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you
You
very much
just,
for having me on again.
great. You just came back from Italy, right?
That's right, a meeting of the FIDE Fair Play Commission.
Okay,
was-
tell us a little bit about your trip, and because a lot of people are not traveling anymore, so you're
That's right.
great one.
So I'll pick up on that. So the first thing to say is that it is by far the easiest trip to Europe I've ever had.
Really?
For instance, I once had the experience of just simply flying from New York to Gatwick, London, and but having a fog or something prevent my bags from being delivered. So I arrived at the Savoy Hotel, a wonderful hotel with the famous chess themed restaurant in it.
Oh,
But having to wear the same clothes 3 straight days because I didn't have my suitcase. The people in the restaurant, at least, were very nice about it. But I was certainly not, I was dressed for traveling, not dressed for one of London's great restaurants. And I finally got my bags the day I had to leave. That was very strange. But this time, absolutely no trouble, partly because I didn't check my bag. I had packed very, very tightly and had everything in a carry-on bag. And that was just in case there was a chance that I might get detained at one place or another by a positive COVID test or by not having exactly the right configuration of requirements. But in fact, there was absolutely no issue at all. And, the other thing is that the trip was post-apocalyptic in this sense. Kennedy Airport was empty. Charles de Gaulle was empty. Flying from Paris to Bologna, I had the most beautiful trip because it was just at dawn and the sun was gleaming off the Alps as we crossed over them. And I was in a brand new A220 Airbus. So the inside of the plane was gleaming white. But the reason it was gleaming white is that there weren't any people in the way. I mean, the plane was maybe 1/4 full, if that. And so, wrenchingly sad to see, but smooth for me.
so Ken, you had a complicated route to Bologna, so you had to fly from Buffalo, I guess, to New York.
Right, Buffalo to JFK, and JFK to Charles de Gaulle, and I chose Paris rather than Amsterdam or Frankfurt because it seemed to have less complication of local COVID requirements.
But how did you get to Gatwick?
Oh no, that was another time. That was
another
2015.
Oh,
I was talking about another time when I went to London in 2015 and
I
had
see.
trouble.
Okay,
I've had
okay, that
bags
makes
lost
sense.
on other
Sorry.
occasions too, but this was super easy. And as my New York State Excelsior Super Pass was accepted as equivalent to Italy's Green Pass. So it turns out that there were some weird gotchas when I tried applying, and whether I read the website in English or Italian didn't matter. I never had the right combination for applying for the Green Pass remotely, but it didn't matter. The people understood that the word super on my New York State Super Excelsior Pass was equivalent to, or Excelsior Pass Plus, but the word plus was equivalent to super in the requirements. So, and I arrived 2 days early, met Uri Garrett for dinner. He was our host, the secretary of the Fair Play Commission, the head of the Fair Play Commission, Salomea Zaksaita, came from Lithuania, and the FIDE managing director, Dana Resnitsa-Ozala, came from Latvia.
We had her husband on our show,
Vincent
remember?
Kuretz, yes, we had her husband on this show. Vincent Kuretz came from the Netherlands, and Yuri hosted. And wait, am I counting all? Any of them? Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I think that's everybody. Yep. So, Alex Cholovich. Alex Cholovich came from North Macedonia, and he had difficulty flying, or actually, no, coming by train. So,
Mm, I
or
see.
both.
I see. It's interesting enough with all this COVID related rules and regulations. You really a lot depend on the people on the ground who are actually enforcing these rules or choose not to enforce the rules. Because the rules are the rules and they're changing every week or so. But
Right.
people on the ground that you are directly dealing with, that makes it all very important.
That's
And
right. And basically the rules were enforced or they were checked anyway. My pass was checked when we went to a restaurant. Everything was done properly as far as I can see.
oh, that's great. That's great. Any interesting decisions of the Fair Play Committee?
Well, it's really the context in which we're operating still has a lot of unknowns. It's not known what the division between fair play and online chess will be. We established rules. We revised our previous guidelines, and we established um, criteria for fair play officers. And understanding what they do in both the online and in-person contexts. And then I gave a three-part presentation um, about how to interpret the numbers that I give. And the first of several examples that I gave actually is I think I may have mentioned it already, part of it on one of your shows, which is the recent show, which is how the context of the positivity rate matters to the accuracy of the test.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think I mentioned the cancer affecting 1 in 5,000 people example last time.
Hmm.
But this time, another relevant example, and this is relevant if you travel. So, suppose you take a test that is 98% accurate for COVID and get a negative. Okay. Now, is that negative merely confirming what you would have supposed, especially during a non surge time, like when it's 2% positivity rate? Or does that really add to things? Well, the answer is the negative result really does have a global effect. So if you give this 90, even though the test is only 98% accurate, you give it to 5,000 people. Okay. So 5,000 people, you're going to, if at 2% positivity, you're going to have 100 factually having COVID. Okay. Now, of those 100, 98 will get positive tests. So you'll have just two get a false negative test. And of the other 4,900 people, you will have about 100 false positive tests, and that's a nuisance. But you'll have 4,800 true negatives. So, first of all, if you get a positive, there are 100 true positives and 100 false positives about. So it's now 50-50. So you might think, what's the point of the test? But on the negative side, if you get a negative, there are only two false negatives out of 4,800. So it's 2,400 to 1 odds against any one person being positive who got a negative. And that means that you can have 10 planes with 240 people each that will be completely COVID free before you get one passenger with COVID, where hopefully your other isolation measures will work. So, in other words, those simple tests, what they do is they filter out 98% of the danger, leaving a quite clean, expected to be clean environment in a restricted setting, such as an airplane. So,
Hmm.
those really do make a difference. Um, and then I explained, so 2% positivity rate is what corresponds to cheating in adult online chess. But if it's junior scholastics, unfortunately, then you get closer toward the 20%. Or when I was in Italy, it was 17% local positivity rate. And I explained how the numbers changed then. And once again, the thing that makes understanding my work difficult is that the actual effective accuracy of the test depends upon the context. Okay, so if you're at 20% positivity, now a positive result, instead of being a coin flip, is 92% likelihood. So the test became a lot more accurate, not because there was any change in how the test was manufactured, it's still the same test, but because of the context in which it's applied. And that is very difficult for
It
to
is.
understand. It was
The,
the negative side was actually a surprise to me. And and so then I transferred these numbers from COVID into the context of chess cheating situations that develop, such as, and this is where it got even more difficult, what happens if a player is wearing, well, actually, the example that I referenced was the one in Italy earlier this month, where a kid's cell phone rang, and the kid had the phone switched off in a bag, which is what our regulations say to do. Um, and he did have to forfeit the one game, but there was no further penalty of that. There are still, however, though, tricky considerations that apply to likelihoods, even given a piece of information like that. So I went through them, but more meaningful is when it's a player wearing a heavy sweater or a floppy hat, something that could be positively associated with cheating.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's difficult.
I was listening today's broadcast from Tata Steel tournament, and for a while I switched to one Russian channels, and they they discuss very interesting issue for what people are thinking about the moves, and there's nothing else to do. So they discuss different issues. One of the issues what they discussed is the weight of an arbiter's decision during the chess game compared to, for example, tennis. In tennis, you remember that Medvedev, he got
Yes.
crazy about this father of Tsitsipas, that he was accusing him that he was uh, during the point that he was suggesting something to his son. I can't even figure out what the father can suggest to a tennis player on such a high level to affect the game. However,
Well, the bit of spend more time at the net could be important. I mean, so
yeah, so but the rules are the rules. However, the arbiter decided not to do anything about it, and Medvedev got really so annoyed
it's
and
a
so furious.
contrast with the U.S. Open final between Serena Williams and Naomi Osaka.
Yes, I remember that too. Yeah, yeah, I remember that. So in tennis, there are times when the arbiter's decision or indecision to interfere or not to interfere, it's sometimes crucial. It's very important, especially when all world is watching that. Now in chess, they discuss, for example, issue. Short, maybe you you know how you do it when you promote your pawn and you take the queen, right?
Yeah.
How? Uh, Tell me, what are your hands manipulations?
Well, I'm really careful about these things, So I put the pawn on the eight, and I have to immediately move it out, remove it, and then put the queen. And if there is
So
no queen around,
oh,
I have to
wait a sec,
start
but
the
very
clock.
important issue. You don't leave it on eighth
No, no,
rank.
I don't. I don't want to
You
give
cannot do
any
that,
chance
right?
to any arbiter or
Because you will
Yuri
lose the
Garrett
game.
or whoever to interfere. I mean, I am very much careful about non-chess people. I mean, an arbiter of chess, no matter
Mhm.
he is Turkish or whatever, is the wildest animal in the jungle. Should
Really?
be hunted down.
Oh,
I saw nobody as arbiters, knowing chess rules for a very long time. Not a single person. We just spoke about world championship arbiter. Who is the guy? Who is
okay.
who is
So,
his deputy?
but Suat, wait a sec, wait a sec. So you have your pawn in your hand. You
Yes.
put it on. Let's see, it's a
For a split
pawn.
second, you have to push the pawn, and then I take this pawn and I put the queen as quick as possible, or whatever, knight, or I
Yeah.
don't know if I ever promoted. I promoted a lot of bishops in one game, just making fun with some Turkish kid. I think I had four bishops, and at some of it I gave a check, and I didn't even understood. I didn't even understand that it was technique.
Sure. So let me understand something. So you hold pawn in your hand, you put
Yeah.
it on the eighth square, then without leaving your pawn alone, you still hold it in your hand. You have to at the same hand grab queen or bishop or like in your case or
No, I remove it. No, it's not like with my other hand, but I have to. I don't make the pawn stand there even for a second.
yeah, but
I don't
you
leave
but
the
you have to,
pawn.
but Scott, you agree that you have to use the same hand to move your piece and press the clock. Okay, you cannot use
Yes, yes, yeah,
just one hand. So your one hand has to leave the pawn, take it out from the eighth square without leaving it there, grab something else, or you leave
yeah,
pawn somewhere else, so outside
yeah.
of the board, grab some queen or bishop, whatever you want to promote to, put it over there in a place of pawn, and then press your
Yeah,
clock.
then press the clock. Yeah, I
Okay.
don't use both hands, but I think you can replace the pawn with your other hand
Mm.
with a piece. But then it becomes very philosophical. If you use both hands or not. It's just. I mean, I don't know, but it's important not to leave the pawn on the eighth rank, just like for some time.
Well, in that case, the internet chess is much easier because you promote your pawn, you select the piece,
Yeah,
and it does it for you. You don't have to worry about that at
yeah,
all. You don't have to run around and look for second
yeah.
queen.
But there is also a problem there because many people using this pre moves, which I never used. I wanted to
Hmm.
play internet chess like normal chess, over the board chess. Then some people they always promote a queen. Then they may have difficulties because sometimes you need the knight to harm your opponent. Let's say not especially checkmate, a fork, whatever. Then comes the problem for the internet chess.
Hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting issue. And another thing, what we discussed about the COVID issue. Let's see, in Tata Steel there are 14 players. Don't you think that, let's see, before the tournament, they all tested negative, I would assume, right? So once they start, don't they have to be in some kind of a bubble to avoid any um, way to get this Omicron or any other variation? Because what it does in case of Dubov, it completely screws the tournament. For example, tomorrow is the last round. And tomorrow, Carlsen was supposed to play Dubov, and of course now he has a point without playing him.
Right.
Uh, so that skews the tournament quite substantially. Do you think it's possible to avoid? Because, okay, so this, although Tata Steel is very important tournament, but now they're coming the World Cup, then the candidates tournament. So how to avoid this calamity in the future? What do you think, Ken?
Yeah, that's a really it's a very difficult situation. At least I hope that this reality generates more respect for rules. I assume the rules were stated fairly clearly that the players could be unmasked, but the arbiter had the right to request a mask, and in with reasonable justification as applied here. Um, One interesting related question is whether wearing a mask affects the quality of play. I'll just say I've seen no evidence of that. I don't know what the mask rate was at the St. Petersburg Chigorin Memorial, which was the
Hmm.
biggest in person tournament held in the fall. But that tournament absolutely hit bullseye on my projections. So no evidence of any lower effect. Same thing from the Grand Swiss. The World Rapid and Blitz, I saw lots of players with masks and lots of players without. If I
Yes,
knew which were which, if someone gave me a list of who was wearing a mask and who wasn't, then that would be a very good test to see if wearing a mask had
absolutely.
any deleterious effect.
Hmm.
Um,
Stuart, you as a practical player, what's your opinion about playing
There
in?
should be no masks, and also statistics should go about the oxygen exchange. By the way, it's not with the quality of game. Some people may be adapted, some people may not be adapted, but no sport should be performed in mask. That's
I,
yeah.
sure, I would agree with you because the oxygen, to supply of oxygen to your brain cells is extremely important, especially in a game like chess. What do you think, Ken?
It depends on the mask. I find this mask, the official KN95 or FFP2 mask, much
Mhm.
easier to breathe through than a cloth mask.
No, the issue is very complicated. Starting with glasses, the vapor it
That's
produces.
true. Yes, it does fog
Also,
up my
I mean,
glasses.
nobody would muzzle me. Then I would really like to not get muzzled. No namornik, no
No
Nakamura
morning.
namornik.
Yeah.
In this case, the this people who are flying to space, they're using the scaphanders, like special spaceship
Mhm.
wearing. So maybe that what will come. The people will play chess in this wearing this spaceship
That's true.
costumes.
Yeah.
No, but
Although,
I think this is not the butt of the problem. The real problem about Dubov's case. Okay, so this is the real case after some time, and we didn't have much cases like Dubov's case. Some in some tournaments at the beginning of pandemic,
yeah,
but
but
this
it's very
is not.
high profile tournament.
Yeah. So this is now the main problem is the responsibility of the players. So according to what the story implies, that Dubov brings a girlfriend there,
Mhm.
and she goes somewhere in Vaikanze shopping, mapping. I really don't know marijuana, she and she gets COVID, and then it goes to Dubov. This kind of fat words spent over the case, like, oh yeah, well, inner circles of Dubov, or on the inner circles of Dubov. I don't know how they phrase it, like, and there was COVID, so we tested to Dubov this and that. Now, with responsible people, the tournament would go on very normally, and whatever happened with Dubov, I don't know. They should have a protocol about it. It really affected the chess part. Somebody drops out of the tournament, it's not like a real competition. Mask, like getting this guy here, that guy there. It's overlasting stuff. Normally, Dubov, when he was asked to play the mask and he refused, rightfully, he had to drop out of the tournament in that moment. I was really surprised. Like, people say, "Oh, principles." I have to tell you something. I played many of these people. I played a lot of chess players. The more time went on, there is no chess player with principle. It's like how much you buy this guy.
Mhm.
But you
So
see, but so it was, in case of Dubov, it was very important decision whether he would drop right before even starting this game where he was forfeited. So then his results would be annulled,
yeah,
done.
why does he
And,
care?
right, but because he stayed in the tournament and only then withdrew, then all the people, like including Carlson, they got 3 points.
Right, he
Yeah.
made it even worse. But it's with the
They
timing
made it
of the
worse,
incident.
much worse. Absolutely.
It's with the
Because
timing of the incident, and also the organizers were not really prepared for this. I played this Vaikanzes quite a lot, and I was
Sure.
as a second of Nigel Short and
mhm.
Luke
Wow.
Van Wele. Actually, my one of my uh, best anecdotes in life comes a very old guy in Vaikanze. He finds me and says, like, Grandmaster Atalk, and I'm really very proud. He says, you are the coach of Fanvele. I say, yes. And he says, you idiot, you Fanvele has, I don't know, minus whatever every tournament. You you do no job. And I was very ashamed. I couldn't even tell him anything. But Vaikanze, uh, as a place, as you have been there, I mean, just it's not the best place to be,
Yeah, it's very
especially in
windy.
winter time. I'm always very curious on this German tourist who comes for the sea in the summertime,
Mhm.
which even in the summertime the place wouldn't be improved. But usually people are or should be more disciplined in Vaikanze. because you don't move here, you don't move there in pandemic time. Now, in some way, you are very right that they should be absolutely isolated, insulated from certain people. But you know what the organizers they do? They give you a room and an accompanying person, right? And this is how it happened with Dubov. It's not like Dubov was partying around, but this really reminded me Alekin Capablanca match. As you remember, Alekin brought his wife, and Capablanca was all around Buenos Aires. At some moment, in order to stop himself and to discipline himself, he moved into the farm of the main arbiter.
Mhm.
And comes this famous situation that Alekin comes to the club, the horse club, the jockey club, whatever, to play one of these adjournment games, and he has a better position. So they ask, like, what do you think about the game? He says, I analyzed a certain number of variations. He comes with a real number, and he says everything leads to win. Then comes Capablanca, says, like, give me a room, postpone the adjournment for 1 hour, because since I live in this farm, I couldn't check the game at all. So they really gave him some time, and Capablanca came and drew the game. Probably somewhere Alekin went wrong. He had a better looking position. And then Alekin became ballistic. He started to tell him, like, but you live in the place of the main arbiter. And Capablanca says, now you tell it to me after the adjournment is played. Now, you have to really... one of the problems, no matter if it is chess foundations, organizations, or the players themselves, and a lot of laymen, it's always around. You have to come up with some seriosity about all these things. In my opinion, organizers this time in COVID, they shouldn't bring anybody else, and the players should be provided in some sort of conditions, like we played Cosmos Hotel in 1994 Olympiad. I never stepped out of the hotel. That was
1994. Yeah,
1994.
I was there. Yes, I remember.
You were also there.
Yeah.
And I mean, outside is not only there is this tough winter, but a lot of dangers were there. There was no need to go outside. Now you provide this, you put it as a condition, because one person like Dubov and one game affects some real tournament like Vakanze. Now we have a very aversive taste in our mouth, like, is this the tournament? Okay, this whatever test, positive, negative, it just affected everything, in my opinion.
It affects everybody. Cross table, the games. It's really awful.
Yeah, I don't see where the organizers were unprepared for it. But it's a question of what can they do.
Yeah.
No, they had to think about it. They shouldn't give this extra person to people. Anybody receives help through internet these days, at least to some extent. Just bring only the player, reduce the numbers, and or then I don't know. Then you have to spend more money, and we go back to this Cuban type of tournaments, which I was told by Velimirovich type of people. They go, they play 3 months, whatever, everybody is happy. So you wait for this guy, Dubov, till he tested negative, then he plays his game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
So the first test, the earlier test was negative, but then the main test was positive, and that's why he quit the tournament.
No, I think it was negative as well, but then he was tested positive.
Oh, so there were 3 tests?
Maybe even more, because he was, I mean, this is a typical kid, speaks very fast, in all these interviews, inserts in unnecessary, words. That's why it's very difficult to understand what he was really
I've heard
telling.
his interviews in Russian. You have to be very, very careful listening what he's saying. He can change his tone in 5 minutes. Really?
A typical chess player, unable to construct sentences, which I would say. But now coming to this issue, I think, according to what he was blabbling, like the first test came negative as well.
Yes.
And then he even meant that maybe more than once he was tested because there was the free day, there was one more game, free day, then he was thrown out of the tournament.
Actually, just because of that day when he refused to play in a mask, very next day was a free day. So why wouldn't organizers adjourn that game till free day? And if by the time of free day he would test it positive, so then they would kick him out of the tournament. All his results would be cancelled, and then would be normal 13 players tournament. That's all. What do you think, Ken? Would that be right approach?
Yeah, I mean it's but it's also very sensitive to the timing of the tests, and a question of
Yeah.
whether you take the next test within 24 or 48 hours. In other words, do you take the second test to as a second opinion on the first positive, in which case you should really take 3 tests and take the majority result. That's much more indicative.
But Ken, would you agree that a lot of these tests are inconclusive? As a lot of these tests are not 100% accurate.
Well, yeah, 98% accurate. But if you take best 2 out of 3, then you have 99.9% accuracy.
Yeah. Well, speaking about Dubov's girlfriend, in Botvinnik, when he was preparing to the tournament, his suggestion was that there should be no sex during the tournament. Like starting 3 days before the tournament, all tournament, and only then you would have a
Ask the New York Yankees slugger Reggie Jackson. He hit 3 home runs in the World Series after on the evening after an afternoon dalliance. So yeah.
But let's not compare Botvinnik with Dubov. Yeah, like I mean, if Dubov had a time travel back and be in the same room with Botvinnik, only one guy would go out.
Well, listen, he was, of course, he was a patriarch of a Soviet chess school, but not even Soviet people like, for example, Tal or Spassky would follow his advice 100% of the time. Sometimes they would do
Neither
otherwise.
Korchnoi.
Even Korchnoi. Yes, that's true. Many others, I would say. Actually, probably all of them except Botvinnik would not follow his advice.
No, but he was he was a man of real principle. I mean,
Yes.
there was something. I was really fascinated in my days in Moscow when I was visiting the Central Club. I mean, there was some sort of mezzanine floor, and he
Yes.
was always moving from one room to another, and the room was getting opened. I was waiting and trying to check, what is inside. There were a lot of papers. This I can tell you. I don't know what he was doing in that room.
But he was
And-
almost blind at that time already.
Yes, but he was also very slowly moving. there is
Because
this
what
guy.
he did, he couldn't see the people, he could see only shades. So when, for example, he had to cross the street, he was watching the shades of the people who were crossing the streets, and he was crossing the street as well at that time. So
No, one day you should summon Sosonko, because Sosonko really
Yes.
was very close to these people, and he was a
Of course,
great
and
player.
he wrote a lot and brilliantly wrote. But I talked to him. He knows English quite well, trust me. But he's some kind of a shy to do this performance in English. He does a lot in Russian, and he loves to.
Yeah.
And he wrote all his books in Russian, by the way. Some of them were translated, but I was trying to talk to him into the English. I communicated with him a lot, just about probably a year or 2 years ago when he published his book about Bronstein.
Mhm.
And I love all his books except this one, except the Bronstein's book. I told him openly that I'm sorry, but because I met Bronstein in 1989 in London, during the candidates matches, and I spent a lot of time with him. And I think Gena was a little bit too harsh on him. Uh,
I had also very harsh stories on Mr. Bronstein, you know. I mean, but I have very similar taste about people with Ghana. And when I was a kid, actually, I had notebooks with his games. We were never impressed when I told him we had a lot of time. When I had some really interesting game, it ended up as a draw with Gufeld, and we had, let's say, some sort of fight after the game.
how come?
Next, oh, he was behaving terrible, you know, and I mean, I just behaved even worse than him at some moment, and then it turned, okay, he had this easy, you know, opposition, and I played till that, and he started to, he went totally mad, and okay, it was a Gochberg tournament, whatever, but it's really, he wrote an article in 64 or
Mhm.
Shahmat Nebut, I don't know which one I
Yeah.
could do. But and his analysis was very good. You know, it was a draw at that very long game, and then immediately after some time, Sosonko comes to me and Gena says like, tell me." I say like, "What? I mean, there is nothing to be proud, you know." And he says like, "Well, yeah, just I will put it into a book." You know,
Oh
I say
yeah.
like, I say like, "Oh yeah, this is like Sinosko Borovsky Capablanca type of thing. Yeah, not so
Yes.
much to talk about chess part, but you will put the incidents of Gufeld." I don't know, you know, really, but about Botvinnik, they were really close. I mean, I've seen them in Holland because Botvinnik was only visiting Holland at some time, no other country. Either you could see him in Moscow or in Holland, and they were close. So this, and I don't know, he's one of the guys really to summon up, but he's it's not like he's shy. He doesn't wanna. I think he's slowing down with his chess. He quit chess already a long time ago, practically after what year 95 or so. He didn't play again, yeah, for a
I
very long
think
time.
maybe even earlier, but
No, no,
maybe.
because sometime around he was invited to this big tournament, maybe 98 in St. Petersburg. So he came back to play this
Oh,
tournament,
so
and
he played in '98. Oh, I see.
I guess so, because already 1992 he was the team captain of Holland, home
Yes, many
playing team
times,
captain in Manila.
many
I
times.
don't know. It's an idea for you.
Oh, you know what, Chad? It's very interesting that Goofeld, he was very tricky. And what he was doing, for example, he was friend of late, well, everybody's getting late, Leonid Stein, famous grandmaster. And but they were friends. And in one game, Goofeld had a better position. And he's asking Leonid Stein, uh, he called him Lena, his first name. He says, Lena, would you like a draw? Stein says, yes, of course, I'd like a draw. And he says, but I don't, and continued to play. So what he was saying, I didn't offer him a draw. I just asked him if he likes a draw.
Yeah, that's right. That's a nasty trick.
No, but I always like the two rooks story
What is it?
when he claimed to have a draw, yeah, like, and then I don't know on which side he was. It's a confusing story, and they had to put below the rooks which rook came there, and he tried to say, yeah, he tried to avoid the draw.
Mhm.
But he said, "This is not that rook. This is the other rook. This is the king's rook or queen's rook." And they put some some paper below it. And at some of it, somebody said like it's with the photograph, you know. But also, I think he has eaten the a German envelope,
Mhm.
which is a great story. I don't know if you knew it.
No, no.
Ah,
This
okay,
does.
so he just sealed a move and he was not so sure he couldn't sleep, so he called the arbiters and said like, you know, we are friends as usual. His introduction, just let's open the envelope, let's check my move if it is correct there. I'm very I have real anxiety, whatever. So arbiters, they were correct, so they refused. And when in the morning the envelope came, he took and he has eaten it, and he was disqualified from the event. I mean, they had a lot of things like that with, especially this guy. You may know. I've never seen him. Yuchtman.
Oh, he was
Oh,
maestro. He
Yuchtman,
was
Jacob
fantastic.
Yuchtman.
I knew
Yeah.
him very well even in Odessa. Yes.
I couldn't meet him, but they had
I
even
knew him in New York
each
City.
other. They would fight.
Oh, he was an artist really,
And
and
he died in States. I think Kenneth has seen him as well. No.
yes.
Yes, in New York City. In fact, he once rode in my mother's car at 2 a.m. with 6 other people in the car because there was a blackout or something in New York City caused the match to run past 1 a.m.
Mhm.
I've had that experience.
He was his one of his tricks was he was coming to like every day. He was coming to Odessa chess club, and he was very famous. People were worshiping him there. So, for example, he was looking at some amateurs as they were playing chess, and he says, "Okay, I would like to offer you a, let's see, an odds. So you will have to pay me 3-1, and I will show you. I will prove that I can promote a queen with a bishop and pawn, and bishop does not control the the the
Promoting
base
square.
promotion square. Yeah, doesn't control. For example, you have a white squared bishop and a black square where pawn is and king is had right before the pawn, the single king, right? So obviously it's a draw. Everybody knows it. So but the trick was that he did not say the draw. He said that he can promote the queen. So when pawn
So he
is on
gives
the
it.
so he says, finally, he was trying a few times here and there, and finally says, a queen! And grabs the queen and put it there. So the amateur says, okay, I'll take your queen. No, you don't understand. What I said that I will promote the pawn. I didn't say that I will win. All I said is that I will promote the pawn. Did I promote the pawn? And he would ask everybody. And everybody says, yes, I did promote the pawn. Okay, now you have to pay me 3-1.
Yeah, that's pretty.
That was fantastic trick. But he was very artistic in find the right time to tell the right story or so on. I mean, he was fantastic. And also, he was a great blitz player. He was demolished Geller, for example. Geller could not
Really?
touch him. Yeah, he was winning
Hmm.
against Stahl, Petrosian. He was in blitz. He was just second to none. He was a fantastic player, and. And he was very, very good at backgammon. And in New York, he was playing a lot of backgammon.
Could he
And
beat Roman Dzhigikashvili at
Oh, this is the
backgammon?
first thing you took the
oh,
words out of my mouth. You know.
I wouldn't have any doubts that he would be because I beat Roman Dzhigishvili in backgammon, and I would
Okay.
assume I never played Youthman in backgammon, unfortunately, but. I remember he was giving me odds in chess. He was giving me 3 minutes each. He would give me rook odds. I could not believe it, and I said, "How the man can win without rook?" And surprisingly, he was playing a very cool game. He did not avoid exchanges, but he was very fast, but not that he was banging at the clock. He was just making moves immediately, and most of the games I was simply losing time. It was impossible to play. He was so good in blitz, just incredible. Anyway, Suat, you like to play blitz games?
No, to some extent, I've seen the people. I myself played. Obviously, I've won some blitz tournaments as well. But these guys are difficult. I have seen Arbakov like that, and he was playing
Arbakov.
with my friend Svitan, and I don't know. There were always discussions.
But Sweden was good in blitz. I remember.
Well, I mean, relatively. Also, Arbakov is good, but you understand that Arbakov had a character quite close to this guy Yuchtman to some extent, although he was more silent and maybe even more serious about chess in some way. But it's the sometime when I was helping Kasimjanov to prepare for his knockout world championships or
Mhm.
whatever. Not the one he was later, after he lost his title, whatever. So we were playing a lot of blitz, and but he was playing very well. Then I asked him the question like, I mean, how come in this world blitz championship you don't perform well? And then he told me the difficulty of playing these people one after another. And he was really right. But I don't know. It's another discipline in some way. Nobody should be, in my opinion. This kind of people also at that time not so much of competition, and we should remember them like in the stories in some way. Because if there would be these blitz tournaments, I'm not so sure if they would perform that well. Also due to other reasons, because for instance, Arbakov was not a bad player over the board, but somehow he convinced some Russian guy that he may qualify to the World Championship, and the guy brought him to Ohrid, the European one of the first European Championships. For instance, I qualified together with some people to some barrage matches, not directly,
Mhm.
but somewhere one of the days, Eisen was the main arbiter. So one of the days there is no Arbakov, and sponsor is really very excited, and they collected Arbakov somewhere around the lake, drunk. I mean, discipline is really important in any sports, and
Yes.
obviously, above
Mhm.
everything, in chess.
Yeah.
So from Dubov to Arbakov or Yuchtman or whatever, there should be some discipline.
Ken,
Yeah.
And
what about you? Have you played a
And,
lot of blitz?
well, I have not played. I'm not never been very good at blitz, but I was going to pick up from what Suat just said and say, how does discipline color our expectations of who will be able to challenge Carlson in the next 5 years? Um,
And what's your opinion?
well, I don't know. I mean, um, you know, for instance, I mean, yeah, um, I really don't know. I mean, Fruzja, for instance, how well is he being trained and looked
Yeah,
after in France?
yeah. I think
Is he really being
from what
trained?
we saw at Weekend there, Tata Steel, um, it's horrible. What Karyakin did is horrible. What Caruana did was close to.
but what Mamedierov did above everyone.
Mamedяров is doing quite well. He's
Yeah, he was doing quite well, but in his game with Carlsen, he
mhm.
just resigned.
Yeah,
Simply, some people cannot play against the guy. He
I think
knows his
all people,
weaknesses.
nobody can play against the guy so far. I
yeah,
That's
think
correct.
well, Karyakin did well, but I think Karyakin deteriorated since their match. I think his
yes. I was
racing
surprised
chops,
at how Karyakin went down. Yes, so
yeah, it went down. Caruana, he keeps his level, but for some reason he's not doing well against Carlson. For some reason he's
But the guy
trying.
is simply more talented than they are. It's very
Mhm.
obvious that he is more versatile and
Yeah,
more talented than both Caruana and Karyakin. I don't know about
yes.
other psychology, Mamedierov, Firuzia, whoever. There are many, many people, but he catches them, he dominates. That's the really interesting part. Karyakin saved his skin or whatever by just using some theory. And maybe he could be also dangerous, but this is not a threat to the crown. Would you like to have a world champion like Karyakin compared to Carlsen? If there was no Carlsen, maybe it makes sense to have a Karyakin. We got in history our own Karyakins, let's say. But, it's not fair if the guy would beat Carlsen and become world champion.
Well, let's face
yeah,
it. Karyakin is a poor man's Carlson. That's really what it
yeah.
is.
No,
Let me show, if it's okay, let me show a couple of moments from today's
Please
Carlson
do.
Caruana game, because I think that this might it's the question for me is how well Carlson in particular has an innate sense of what the computer would actually be saying in this case. So now you can see the chess bomb window of the game. You
Yes.
see? Okay.
Yes, I remember this position.
Right. So this is first of all indicative. According to Stockfish 14.1 over here, where my mouse is, Black should play A4 to equalize. Instead, Carlsen plays a move that I think is a real Carlsen move. Put pressure here, and supposedly gives White a slight edge with C5. But first, I got to tell you, C5 is a really ugly move.
It
Makes
is.
holes everywhere, and has happened in the game. But if White doesn't play C5, then the computer thinks White's fairly substantially behind. I mean, half a pawn unless you play Knight D2, which I guess makes sense to cover C4. I was expecting Caruana to play Queen A2 with playing D5 and with the center. Anyway, Caruana found the computer move, and now Bishop C6. Okay, Rook B1 already. Knight D2 is what the computer wanted to make, and now supposedly White is doing well with Rook B4, but Rook B4, committal kind of weird move, and so we drift now into this position where it's not um, it's not um, it's not computer moves, but it's natural. And now we see the holes have come to fruition. Black's queen took this diagonal, Black's bishop is this diagonal, but still White is doing fine according to the computer. Now Carlsen plays a gambling move. Oh, sorry, Caruana plays a gambling move. Caruana plays F3.
Oh my God.
Receives rook takes d4, yeah.
Yes. Now, what's your sense of danger here? The point, however, though, is if Black doesn't play rook takes d4, then according to the computer, White has quite a substantial advantage. In fact, the fourth best move gives White more than 3-point advantage. So this looks dangerous for Black, but of course you don't have to ask Black twice. You're going to sack this exchange anytime.
It has to.
Yeah, has to. Yeah, and now this is a pawn advantage for Black according to the engine, and the moves all look alike. I have no idea why Bishop C3 is a mistake compared to, I guess maybe trading queens is something you shouldn't want to do in this position as White. But in any event, it's nebulous chess, and obviously the players disagreed about the evaluation of the position after the exchange sacrifice. But Carlsen is better at that kind of nebulous chess than anyone else.
Incredible, but C5, if Black has White square bishop and White doesn't have one, how C5 looks so ugly? How Caruana didn't evaluate the position that the Black bishop on C6 will control the game?
He was afraid of b5, yeah?
Yeah,
he was afraid that Black would push b5 after any of these moves, knight d2 or queen a2. I think Black would go b5.
Yeah.
So Carlsen is a very good psychological player just as well.
It's technical also. Look, he gets one of the things for this level is not to play only good, but to push your opponent to make mistakes and to keep the game alive. I mean, he couldn't do it with Karyakin. Also, he didn't want to do it in some way. He was okay if he plays that way, But in this game, somehow he took Caruana out of his skin. I mean, Caruana is actually very mechanical, in many cases. But here, allowing the exchange sacrifice, well, almost you are doomed. No matter if it is Carlsen or anyone else, you play a very difficult game with a solid pawn on a4 and b7 and the bishop anchored on c6 and your central pawn e5, c5. It looks really ugly, but I think he was really afraid of b5. I think c5 is not a bad move, but after that, he had to play in a different way. And also, although bishop g7 is closed, still two bishops.
Yeah, Yeah, and these two bishops were more than great compensation for the exchange, because at the end, White still had an exchange, was exchange up, but he couldn't save the game. There was no way he could save it.
No.
And just incredible. Anyway,
Yeah.
listen, we are going to discuss more about this tournament and the other chess news next week. Have a good one. And
Thank
thank
you.
you very much for participating in today's program. All the best. See you next
Okay.
week. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.